Namaste. Welcome to today's dialogue on Dharma. So, at Dharmic Shakti, we are exploring Dharma in different facets of our lives, and also basically looking at how can our ancient wisdom be of relevance in today's world. And so today, very specifically, we want to look at Dharma in the world of economics, with the key theme being temple economics, or what we call Mandir Arthavyavastha. So I'm joined by Sandeep Singh today. Sandeep ji is the author of a number of books on Bharatiya Economics, and he has recently written a multi-part book on temple economics. We tend to think of temples as a place of worship, at least that is how I used to think of it. But it's always been more than that for centuries, and temples have been at the heart of our civilization in all aspects, right? Culture, architecture, including economics. So when I read Sandeep ji's book, it was very revealing because there was so much data on how we need to look at temples and how much temples have influenced our economics. And he's actually tied the growth of Indian civilization and temples as well as Indian economics, right? So I really thought today would be very beneficial for anybody listening to it. Very, very illuminating it was for me to read the book. So I'm very excited to speak to Sandeep ji in person. Thank you for joining me today. And I've been really looking forward to this discussion, and we finally found the time that works. Before we start getting deep into the topic, could you just share a little bit about yourself to the audience and what made you start looking at something like temple economics, right? So
yeah, thank you for giving me the platform. Pleasure talking to you. So what made me work on book on temple economics? So the genesis was actually my second book, which I titled Indian Ocean Strategy, where I'd written almost 1.5 page on temple-based economy. Then after that, lot of time I was asked to speak on that. Friends used to ask, write little more. Then the COVID happened in 2020, and I saw two things happen during COVID. Suddenly there was a call. Neither central government said nor any of the state government said that they have shortage of money. But there was a call from Tamil Nadu state government asking mandirs to deposit so much of crores in the state coffer, and which they took it back after a few Hindus went to the court. And that time there was a call from a lot of other Hindus as well that why mandir needs money and all those things. And the second thing was that I saw people started walking from Bombay to their hometown in UP and Bihar and other places also. People walked all over India. So my question was that what gives people the confidence, apart from the physical strength that I'll walk down, is that I'll be safe because individuals didn't walk alone. It was a family, the wife, the kids, sometimes the elderly parents, and the pets also. And 99.999% people reached home safely, except some who died in the accident, road accident or rail accident kind of stuff. So I kept wondering, where do these people get this confidence that I'll walk 1,000 odd kilometers? When the politicians walk, they make such a noise, Padayatra and this and that. These people walk, and across India they walked. It was not a small number. So then I thought it's just must be coming from the Tirth Yatras what we take. We walk in Sabrimala, we walk in Amarnath, we walk in Vaishno Devi, you name it, Kavada Yatra. And all of them you carry weight. Sabrimala, you carry something on the head, and Kavada, we've seen people carrying 150 liter of water and all kind of things. So that gives them the strength that this is not the physical strength alone. It gives you mental strength. This is my nation, my country. I'm walking among my people. So Hindus don't go on rampaging if they don't get something, unlike other people. And they know there's a problem, and on the way the people. So I kept wondering what made them think where will they eat, who will give them food. But it's the Hindu community and the Hindu mandirs. Just that our mandirs feed lakhs of people every day. We just don't tom about it, don't market it, don't advertise it, unlike others. So I think this is the important part that I did write about temple economics. So that was where but when I started writing, I thought ki COVID will my great prediction ki 6 months to chalega hi. So I'll finish the book. Nothing doing, sitting at home. So it took me 3.5 years. I wrote 4 volumes, but published two. So I realized one thing. Ki, we shouldn't think that I think one lifetime is less to write a book on one particular mandir also. Tirupati, Jagannath ji. There's so much facets of every mandir.
Mm.
So, yes, one cannot write about all the mandirs in one book. So I've covered as much as I can, and as you would have seen, there are almost 70 odd case studies.
Yes,
Uh,
yes. It's
so
filled with the data.
yeah.
It's very interesting, right? What you mentioned about this whole strength that people had during COVID, and how the Indian response was very different from the global response. Because at that time we were also seeing the shutdowns happening across the world, and people were, stealing toilet paper from stores, and
Yeah.
and over here we had just people so quietly dignified walking home, and a lot of people supporting them, right? So I think that brings me to this whole point, right? The central idea behind the temple, and how temples give power to people. So if you could maybe start off by telling us what has a temple meant for Indians beyond just a spiritual place, and how did it basically influence society?
So first thing that I'll talk about is temple and mandir. So,
Yes.
so the Christians go to church,
Yeah.
Muslims go to mosque, even Jews go to synagogue, which are just 2%. But when you ask Hindus, especially in English, where do you go? We go to temples.
Mm.
Now, if I looked at the dictionary definition, temple is the place of worship of pagans or anybody,
Mm.
not specific. And pagans are the civilizations which don't exist. And there's an important difference that I need to tell here is that people live in Egypt, but they don't know how to build the pyramid. While we have older structure in terms of Brihadeshwar Mandir, and we can build that, it means that that knowledge has passed from generation to generation. So we are a living civilization. So
Yes.
we have whatever we claim, 5,000 to 20,000. Like every archaeological discovery pushes the year. Latest being Rakangiri, or before that Sonali. It has just changed the dating. So we are a living civilization, and we need and mandir is a very different place. So in a church or in a mosque, people gather to worship. In a mandir, we do a pran pratishtha of murti, and we invite Bhagwan to stay there. It's Bhagwan's house. So what we need to call is that a mandir or kovil or devale, whatever we are comfortable, but not temple. Temple is a place of lost civilization,
Yeah.
Mayan, Egyptian, and all that. So henceforth, I'll use the word mandir hence.
Yes.
And what it meant, it was the nucleus of the society. Our every activity revolved around the mandir. Uh, so I'm sure even there are people today who won't have their dinner till they hear the bell of finishing prayer, the bell of the last prayer of the day in the mandir. So that was it. The day started with the mandir's prayer. So start and end, your meal starts and ends. Everything is related to the mandir. In fact, in Tamil, there is a saying is that one shouldn't stay where there is no mandir. So our education, our science, our medicine, you name it, and I'll give examples as we go along, revolved around the mandir. And it was the pandits in the mandir who used to decide everything. In fact, most of the places, it was the pujari who used to tell uh, 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 which crop should be harvested, cultivated. Because they could predict the amount of rainfall will happen, and accordingly they will tell which variety of rice or wheat to be shown.
Yeah.
So, and we have mandirs which were given the land which were not worthy of agriculture. They were handed over to the mandir, and they used to make it worthy of agriculture, and then it was given back to the villages. And we have recorded history. In fact, they're recorded on the stones of the mandir walls. So, so anything and everything that you can think of in a Hindu's life goes around the mandir. It's not only bhakti, everything, our natya, our shastra, kala, music, everything originated from the mandir. So we can't think of being without a mandir. And maybe that's how we see when the Hindus, wherever they have migrated, they have built a mandir. And not only the recent time, the wealthier one, but even what we call endangered laborers, which Britishers took to Fiji, West Indies, all over the world, and wherever they went, you'll find that there is a local pond or a river which they worship as a Ganga. Though they were taken forcibly most of the time, very cruelly, but they kept their practices alive. And you can see it in some of the cricketers, Shivnarayan Chandrapal, or I'm putting the first name, Maharaj of South Africa. And when they come to India, they visit the mandirs. So you can't take, you can't separate Hindu and a mandir.
Yes. In fact, I was talking to someone, and they actually had drawn a schematic diagram of the layout of a city as per the Arthashastra. And in that, the mandir was always smack in the middle, right? The center of every city was the temple. And so my understanding is that a lot of sciences also got developed from the temple, and the temple itself gave rise to a lot of scientific knowledge. So can you just maybe talk a little bit about that also?
So I'll start with the temple mandirs town planning. The way say, the Madurai is one of the mandirs that we see, which is based on that. The normal, in fact, today morning we were in a seminar kind of thing where this thing came up also, and I said, so what normally we'll say is there were surroundings, they were made. That the first layer was people who will stay was the Brahmins, then the Kshatriyas, then the Vaishyas, and so which is such a wrong way of to look at it.
They were actually, divided into corners, like this is your place, this is your place, and they developed according to that.
Yeah, so therefore, which is the wrong way to look at it. It was caste based. Actually, it is a more managerial management technique. So the people whose services will be needed most frequently in the mandir, they will stay the closest. So the pujari will need with 24/7. And the next step, Chhatri, is what we say is actually most of the mandirs, Utsav Murti was taken out at least once in a day, at least in the evening, if not every day morning. And you need people who can carry, the bulk of the weight of the Utsav Murti. And obviously, these are the guys who are warriors. So they stayed the next. And so one other person who stayed in the first lane was the person who wakes up the Devata Bhagwan in the mandir every day in the morning. And different mandirs have different musical instruments. So by no definition, they will classified as a Brahmin, but he stayed closer to the mandir. So it was just in time concept, and it was an operational management issue which was sorted out, and not caste-based hierarchy the way we look at it. It was the guy who will be required exactly type. So it was a pure management principle on which the city was planned. Coming to the science, so just think of the moment when we start building a mandir. So the first thing that we had decided is the direction. And how do you decide the exact direction where it has to come? So it means the person was aware of the geometrical calculation, the trigonometry, and obviously the astronomical calculation. So we have 1,000-year-old mandirs where the sun ray falls on the face of Bhagwan on a particular time every year, and there are many mandirs like this. So the issue is that how did these people know such huge astronomical calculation? So to do astronomical calculation, the basic requirement is 0. Now, just to give you perspective, just imagine if I have to write 10,857 in Roman. I think it will need a couple of A4 size paper, the way you have to put it. And that was one of the reasons why a Greco-Roman society did not develop astronomically, or they couldn't get into the sea travel as much as Indian could. If you don't have a 0, you couldn't calculate latitude, longitude. So you can't do the navigation. And that is what our ancestors know. In fact, it's a very interesting fact is that in Europe, the way we talked about World War One, World War Two, there was something called Maths War One and Maths War Two. So in Europe, church controlled science and everything, the life. So they could not comprehend the concept of 0, whether the 0 is empty or it encompasses 1 to 9. And it took them 500 years to understand. And for us, it is a small, simple slogan which most of us pray as a Shanti prayer, Purnamadi, Purnamada, So if you take out full from the full, the full remains. So that is what 0 is. And it took them 500 years. And they took another 500 odd years to figure out, except integral calculus, which originated what we call as a Kerala School of Mathematics, which is 0 to infinity. Again, they couldn't figure out what is infinity and how do we calculate 0 to infinity. And the oldest description of a 0 in India is found in a mandir in Gwalior. So where the church couldn't figure out, here we have evidence that a 0 is there. Moving to there.
Unfortunately, for many years, we were told that 0 didn't come from India, it came from Arabia.
Yeah, because the Europeans learned from them.
Yeah, and then I think now recently that at least in the last 20 years it has been corrected. But I remember learning that zero came from Arabia,
Yeah.
and the
In fact, the
decimal
numericals
system came.
also,
Yeah,
1, 2, 3, they got it from India.
correct. And that makes a lot of difference in the whole computation, right? So,
Correct.
point that you made that they didn't even have forget the knowing the maths. They didn't have even the basic numbers to be able to do that kind of calculation.
Correct. So, and I'm just talking about the construction of mandir. I wouldn't get more detail. I'll move to the construction or making of a murti.
Sure.
So the Nataraj that you see in the Bharat Mandapam much talked about, or the old Pragati Maidan, or the Nataraj in front of CERN in Switzerland where the research is going on a black hole.
Yeah.
So that is made using a technology called lost wax technology. And that is, according to current estimate, is just 4,500 years old. And that was developed to make murtis actually. So that's a technology that was developed to make murtis is still in use. Now, that is again, we are a living civilization, the second evidence of that. And coming to is that the Nataraj Murti signifies something very big. The Tao of Physics, Fridget of Capra wrote, and again, Carl Sagan has talked about. So the Nataraj Murti represent the cosmos, the beginning and end. What we call Shivji is the Mahakal, Bhagwan of time. Uh, so whatever time, if the lost wax technology is 4,500 years old, people before that knew the Nataraj Murti to be made, which will represent the whole cosmos, the
Yes.
construction and destruction of it. So that was the level of science and the level of art that such a huge cosmological phenomena can be depicted in one simple murti, which what we'll call is that so-called illiterate artisan makes it to the perfection. And he understands if you talk to them. He may not be able to write, but he'll explain you the whole concept beyond the Nataraj Murti and the design of it. So imagine the level of art that was developed those days, apart from the science. Now, coming to a step further, uh, after these two things, what comes to your mind will be पूजा के लिए फूल चाहिए, we need flowers to offer. Now, again, sticking to Meenakshi Mandir, so the jasmine flower. So why jasmine is grown all over India, but why that particular jasmine is so much famous and popular? Because there is a high amount of sulfur in the soil there. Uh, the petals are thicker. A thicker flower petal means it has more moisture. Now that means it will be fresh for a longer period of time. The second part, it blossoms late in the evening compared to rest of the jasmine all over India. So again, it remains fresh for a longer period of time next time. Jasmine is offered to the goddess. I think 6 times they change the jasmine garland what they wear. The women are asked, they put traditionally the jasmine. So jasmine has a quality too. It makes the hair stronger and better. Uh, and that is why the hairs which are offered in different mandirs are in huge demand by Europeans and Americans to make use them in the wig because they are of better quality and they work as a stress reliever. So you put it on just as a what you call gajra or
Yes, yes.
mala, and you put it, and it works as a medicinal purpose apart from the beauty that is there. It's so beautiful compared to you take it to a plant and extract oil and then use the oil or make it as a medicine and then use it. You know?
But unfortunately, these days you don't no longer find it. Like I grew up in Chennai, and it was customary that everybody would wear flowers in their hair, even in
Yeah.
school. School, it
Yeah.
was okay to come, with flowers, and nobody would say
Yeah.
anything. Now, of course, it's not allowed, but it's no longer available. Now it's all gone.
Yeah.
Actually, you don't
So
see it
there
in
are
the
two
roads.
part is that yes, one people don't use it because you are made to feel low that you are old fashioned,
Mm.
but people need to understand that how it helps them, and I think it will come back. And the second is that with a huge economic angle. In December 21, the export price was only some 4,100 rupees kg.
Mm.
So a lot of people's survival family depends it, and it has survived so far because of the mandir. So that's an economic angle to it, and there's a pure scientific angle to it. And so much so that the famous chemist that India has ever produced, Dr. P.C. Ray, whom
Mm.
Britishers didn't allow to do research in their lab, so he converted his whole house into a lab. He donated his all future salary, and some of the India's best known chemistry scientists have come from his lab. And he was the guy who went on to form Bengal Chemicals. He wrote 2 volumes on Hindu chemistry. which is basically English of Rasayan Shastra that had. So he was looking for the book Rasayan Shastra. And as we know, like, most of the 126 libraries in India were burnt, universities were destroyed, most of the literature was lost. He kept looking for a copy and finally he writes in the preface of the book that he found one copy in the Raghunath Mandir in Jammu. And another great scientist that we have, J.C. Bose, Jagdish Chandra Bose, when he created his lab, you know what he named? It is known as Basu Vigyan Mandir. And people can go, exists, it is one of the finest scientific institutes that India has and produced phenomenal amount of work and phenomenal scientists. And Rabindranath Tagore wrote a beautiful poem on Basu Vigyan Mandir. It's in Bengali, but if you hear it, it gives you goosebump. So that is how close Mandir was with science, and some of the best scientific brain could relate to it. And I'll give you another example. Nobel laureate C.V. Raman's association with Mandir. I hear some people talking about it as an atheist. So the way we create false narrative. So the mridangam and all those equipment that have, I think they produce a kind of a harmonic which is not expected but of those instruments, but they do. So he went on to research and it came down to the way Indians manufacture those instruments and the technique lies in that and it produces harmonic sound. So none less than Dr. C.V. Raman went on to study that. So science is very closely related to mandirs. It's just we haven't looked hard enough after independence. But whatever Bose, P.C. Ray or C.V. Raman did, it faded out after Mandir and, everybody, the so-called seculars started imposing their will on the functioning of Mandir. And we kind of destroyed the Mandir. But science is hugely linked to the Mandir.
Yeah, and that's because the mandirs, we found the Brahmins mostly in the mandirs, and the Brahmins went through a very vigorous scientific study, right? The my understanding is that the whole language of science was Sanskrit only in those days, because you had people from different regions speaking their regional language, but all educated people would know Sanskrit because education happened in Sanskrit, and dissemination of knowledge happened in Sanskrit. So all the pandits were knowledgeable. And speaking from my own experience, my father comes from a Mandir family in Kerala. He's part of the Kshatriya family, and the temple over there used to be, the whole area was almost like a Gurukula. So the Kodungalur place itself was known to be a Gurukula, so much learning, but we have lost all of that, right? Somehow there has the kind of impact the Mandir had in Indian life has shrunk. And it's happened sometime. You've detailed it quite, elaborately. Can you just tell us really what took away the Mandir from Indians?
So I guess it started with the invaders, the Turks, the Mongols or the Mughals, the Islamic invaders. They kept destroying the Mandir. And not only they destroyed, but they burned the Mandir as the Gurukuls were lost, everything was lost. So that was the beginning of it. And then the Britishers came and they all realized that you can extract wealth out of the Mandir. And they kept killing the Mandir. And one of the things that Britishers started, actually Aurangzeb said that you must kill all the Brahmins because they teach and burn the book. He was very clear how to destroy and you need to do it. And then the Britishers came and they also started, and they were the guys who sowed the seed against Sanskrit. And they were their stooges like Raja Ram Mohan Roy. So there's a very interesting thing. When they said they will start a medical college in India in English, the Muslims protested that it should be in Urdu. And Raja Ram Mohan Roy wrote a letter which I have given in the book that it should not be in Sanskrit and it should be in English. And he wrote a full one-page letter that how what you call how derogatory it will be to teach in Indians in Sanskrit. So that was the started, and then we have seen the movement in Dravidian movement and whatever that why puja should be done in Sanskrit and why not in Tamil. So I have no objection. You must pray in whichever language you want to. But Sanskrit and the prayer are not simply prayer. They are the mantras, and they are like, and we know the frequency waves, sound wave is established science. They're used in all kind of things. So the way we pronounce certain words Uh, and I recall it like you see, sometimes you sit and specifically for the people, everyone can relate who is married and the wedding also, Pandit will ask you to repeat after them.
Yes.
And we are not able to pronounce those words,
Mm-hmm.
because they are pronounced in a certain particular way that you learn from a different, over practice over years. And they generate different kind of waves. And there, I've given in the book, different research have been done. And they say that it matters. In fact, the most popular study that everybody knows is that the people who study in Sanskrit, their brain is more developed and that they do better in life. So all those things are there. So once you remove the Sanskrit from the mandir, the efficacy will go down. And then the bhakt will say, see, I've been coming to this mandir so many times and it doesn't affect me anyway. So why should I visit?
In
And
fact,
then he
that's
becomes a potential candidate for conversion. And
that
that is what
has
they do.
yeah this point that you mentioned, right, removing Sanskrit from the mandirs. I think this has been the difference between the temples in the north and the south. In the south, to a very large extent, Sanskrit has still been, because I'm from the south, but I recently been traveling around, and I've seen that the understanding of the agamas, the temple rituals, was largely more in the south than in the north. Even the way the mandir is maintained, right? Because as you said, it's a prana pratishta, and you have to keep energizing it. There's a science to it. It's not that God comes and sits there. We are bringing down the cosmic energy and we are keeping it in that field. But unfortunately, now there's so much political movements happening that they are even trying to regionalize that also. Like in Tamil Nadu, you see there's a big issue going on with converting all the temple rituals in Tamil, right? And removing Sanskrit again. So there's a clear attack on Sanskrit over here. I don't know what is the solution. You talked about in the book also how you gave, in fact, your other book uh, gave a very good example between the economic development uh, when it happens in a city through industry, and when it happens in a city through a mandir, the level of sustainability that is there to it. And you gave a slightly different perspective in your ocean economics books, where you talked about New Orleans versus Mumbai, right? Examples. So if you could elaborate on both, right? The whole concept of economic sustainability via mandir versus, let's say, put a large automobile factory, right? What is the difference? And that specifically that Mumbai piece also, if you can just elaborate on that.
Okay. Uh, and I'll cover this, the Sanskrit, decline Sanskrit in North.
Yeah.
So after the attacks, there was a time in Aurangzeb killed all the pujaris in Kashi also.
Yeah.
Uh, and so there was a worry that who will teach and how the rituals will function. Then the pujaris from Maharashtra and Andhra went and settled there. And the people running away from Kashmir is well established. And you will be shocked. Again, I've given those example in the book. There was a committee formed before independence to look into the mandirs. And there was a Rai Bahadur, the British stooge, I'll again call. He wrote that the conditions, and for him is that the person must know English. He may, or the pujari may or may not know Sanskrit, that is fine. But he must know English. That was the criteria. So our own people have, killed Sanskrit knowingly. I'll say that.
Yeah.
But anyway, I think now there's a revival of Sanskrit. I see a lot of people studying at different stages of life. So we'll get Sanskrit its rightful place, I'm sure.
Definitely, that's one of my core passions, actually, right?
Yeah.
So very dear to my heart.
And coming to the example that people ask, what is Mandir economy or temple economy for them? So the Detroit was a city of modern economy, where the car manufacturing started the first, and the suburbs were developed to supply the ancillary units. But today, Detroit is called as the dying city. Its population has reduced to what it was originally. Now it's 20-25%. So the reason it died, the city, is that the cars were manufactured there, which they started getting manufactured cheaper cost in Japan, Philippines, India, Korea.
China.
So obviously, and all this product of new industrial economy, somebody produces it cheaper and better, or they get a replacement product. If you remember, like, the pager or the camera, they're obsolete now because of the new product. So the cities based around that keeps dying. So if one just goes on the internet and searches for ghost towns in Europe, in Russia, in China, they will get a huge list of such cities. While at the same time, when you look for some of the oldest living civilization, as I mentioned, where people have stayed continuously, you have the name like Pushkar, Ujjain, Patliputra. No, Varanasi is known older than history, Rameshwaram, and they don't have any industry.
Right.
So what makes them survive? It's obviously the mandir. Now comes is that how does the economy develops around the mandir? So I'll give an example of a mandir-based product. That is Saree. So it took of a name of any Saree, Kanjivaram, Banarsi, Sambalpuri, Dhakeshwari. They come from a temple town, Mandir town or temple town. So why they are so popular? That because the design of the flowers and petals that you see, say in Banarsi Saree, will be the one which are offered to Goddess Parvati. So it's not just a product that we are wearing; it is a spiritual connect with the sari, and how powerful sari as a brand is. Portuguese understood it so well that for 200 years when they ruled Goa, they had put a ban on weaving and wearing of sari. But sari survived in Goa. So how did it survive? That's a goosebump story. So the weavers dug a hole, they created kind of a basement in their house and they used to weave in the night, and women used to wear sari in the night. Now, 200 years. You can imagine 8 to 10 generations doing it. So that was their commitment, and I think we don't appreciate enough what our forefathers have done to keep this dharma alive. The kind of pain they have taken in different facets. And one side, the Portuguese had banned the sari, and look at the other way. Mother Teresa realized that sari is very important. And that sari that she used to wear, that white sari with a blue border, missionaries of charities have got it patented. Imagine now a Hindu woman, if you want to wear that sari, you have to pay royalty to missionaries of charity. How our mandir-based products are getting appropriated at our lifetime, I feel ashamed sometimes, and we don't realize it also, that how even the patent was allowed. So that's the power of a mandir-based product. I wouldn't get much deeper. We can have a sari. I have a 90-minute lecture, so we can do a whole show on sari someday.
Yes, we
Yeah.
should. We should. Because it's
So
very interesting to know about these different kinds of weaves, right?
yeah,
And
and the sari weaving involves lot of mathematics, high level of mathematics. We don't appreciate enough how those designs come, and the weaver knows those high level of mathematics and the chemistry. Because if you see how those different colors have come in right proportion, how do you develop those colors? And they are all environment friendly colors. Till now the modern paints have come. Otherwise, traditional colors were used, taken from different stones or trees, barks, and the leaves. So that's another fascinating story. So
in fact, you
again, the
don't
mandir
get
based,
those weaves now. You get them as prints.
yeah, and the weaves have become expensive, and
Very
but we must
expensive.
keep buying them so that this
Yeah.
tradition is alive. And when huge number of people will buy, the prices will go down. That normal economy with pricing formula will kick in. Uh, so, uh, so this is just one of the product I'm talking about, and imagine how powerful sari is. I'll tell you how people relate to it. So, Parvez Musharraf's wife was threatened that she should stop wearing sari. She said, "I'm fine, get me killed. I'm not giving up sari." Uh, and there is another incident when in Bhubaneswar there was a hockey match played between India and Pakistan. It is remembered for an ugly incident, but Pakistanis did. They beat India in that match, and all of them took off their t-shirt on the ground. The same players insisted that they want to buy saris from the Kathak, the famous Orissa saris, because the families have demanded back in Pakistan.
Mm.
And the shop was opened in the night, and special security was provided, and they went and bought the sari. Darwin's great granddaughter had a statement saying, "I like to be born in India in my next birth." And she was asked why, because she said, "I'll know how to drip sari." So we just don't appreciate the product that we have sometimes. And so Mandir has given us such a powerful product, and there are many such things. And that's how our economy revolves around it. And you also talked about to give me difference between Bombay and New Orleans rain. I don't
Yes.
have those figures, but New Orleans in July 2005, if I recall correctly, it had rained Mumbai and New Orleans suffered a cyclone. The amount of water Bombay got was sometimes 6 or 7 times at what New Orleans got. But Bombay was back on feet next day. New Orleans took some 10, 15 days. The worst part was that the loot that happened. People had put up posters, they painted the walls that the owner is inside the house, they had a gun. Bombay, there was not a single case of even chain snatching.
Yes.
Even that day, the robbers and the thieves said that nothing doing, we have to help. I was on the road that day. I have my own experience, and I've seen like the best of the cars in Bombay has they were left all over, and there was not a single case that somebody took away the sound system or the wheel. People came back after 2 days, 3 days because there were not enough what you call pickup vans who could tow the cars to the garage. They just lied, and everything was in there. So that day you realize that people will say that Bombay is very matlabi. People don't have time. They won't care for the neighbor, but the whole city stood. The same they were slum dwellers for whom the pavement people who live on pavement, whom the people staying in building will say remove them, stood guiding the people who live in building where is a manhole, and not to go in that gully because there's a current of the water is very high. So the whole city stood up, and ours is that day we realized that how different our city is. So Indian cities are very different because Indians are very different. For us, it's a family, and that is coming back to the concept when I said what makes one confident that I can walk 1600 kilometers. I don't know where to stay, where the food will come, and the guy is walking not alone but carrying wife, kids, parents, pets. So we are different.
I think
We just need
over
to look
here,
around.
the role of the Devata, right? The Mandir is about the Devata, and the Devata for us is not just like an idol. People think it's an idol, but it's actually some kind of a force, some cosmic power, which not just which protects, right, that land. So if you could just share a little bit more on your thoughts on the Devata, right, and the Devata's role in the city, in the temple, and in the lives of people.
I have a very nice example. When you go to Mandir, so you'll find people standing in queue, like big mandirs like Tirupati, let's say. Now they give time based. You have to come, so you don't
The
have to stay. But even
stages.
yeah, the 3 hour or 2 days, people have been standing on the big occasions. So what do? We want to go to this mandirs for darshan of the Devta. So once we go in front of the mandir, so we might have been told as a kid, the haath jodo, fold your hands in front of the God. But after that, nobody tells anything else to do. So what we do, just think, we actually close our eyes. Nobody has ever told, and neither I have told any kid or anybody told me when I was a kid, कि भगवान के सामने आंख बंद कर लेना. You have to close your eyes. So why do we do it? So we know that Devata is there, but Devata under भी है, the God is within us also. So we would have made so much of effort traveling all the way to Tirupati, stand 2 days, but when we're in the front, we'll close our eyes and pray. You know, so that's the beauty and that's the power of the Devata. And each one relates to the his or own Devata in a different way. You ask people, most people have their own favorite Bhagwan.
Yeah.
Come to Bombay, the kids, the Ganpati you should see. And the Visarjan day, the way they're crying because every home keeps it. And I guess everywhere, I've seen Durga Puja when Durga Mata is taken for Visarjan, how you feel. You connected it. वो हमारे घर आते हैं, हमको बुलाते हैं. और ये हर हर फेस्टिवल के लिए है. If you look at the people who work, the way they worship on their equipments on the Vishwakarma Puja and Dashara Puja, so the way so भगवान हमारे परिवार का हिस्सा है हम लोगों के लिए. तो that's how they're connected, and you'll see that whenever we see a mandir crossing, people touching their heart, and though it was dying, but I think it's reviving again. Like every office, good office complex that I say has a mandir. you
Yes.
know, and people stand in a queue, bend their head. So, like you've come to some of the places, some of the office complex in Bombay, you get complex looking at those cars, expensive cars, all that one can think of, and all the guys coming out of the car, and the driver and the sahab both standing in the queue, in the same mandir. So, Bhagwan ke mandir mein sab barabar, everybody is equal. You can see it there. So, it's a very intricate part. We just can't think of our life without uh, we just normally don't realize that how many times हम भगवान को दिन में परेशान करते हैं. Whenever in trouble, you're getting late, you're not getting taxi, we'll just give SMS, mental SMS to भगवान यार कुछ कर दीजिए. Right from school, homework नहीं हुआ तो आज पिटवाना मत भगवान. तो भगवान हमेशा रहते हैं. We just don't notice it.
In fact, Bhagwan used to be very specific. Each Bhagwan of the temple, right? Each Devata had a very specific purpose. So my family has a temple it's within the house. And this is a very specific Devata. She's a form of Devi. And she, because this was it was a small temple built by the children of the family. Okay. So she's a lost and found specialist. So, because children keep losing something, pen, eraser, something or the other,
Yeah.
they'll go to her and they'll ask her and they'll find it. So
Yeah.
much so, like today, many of us, it's very amusing that I know I told this to my aunt, and my aunt lives in Malaysia, and she told this to her Chinese friend. She was a teacher, and they lost some file, and they said, "Okay, the lost and found Devi in Kerala. But you have to give us something. You have to make an offer. 1
Yeah.
rupee, 10 rupees, whatever. Make an offer. I'm making this offer to you. Please help me find it." And this Chinese teacher said, "Okay, anything," because it was a whole, some important documents for the school, and they found it. And after that, she's become such a believer, right? So as you said, the devatas also in each temple had some very specific functions,
Correct.
right? And the temple was known for that.
And the most important part, unlike other religions, God, our devatas won't say that if you don't follow me, I won't help you and you'll go into hell and burn there.
Correct.
Whoever comes to them, they help them, whether Chinese or whoever he or she is. And that's why I consider they are the real devatas.
And you don't have to go there, right?
Yeah.
This lady was sitting in the other part of the world. She just, thought about it, and it's.
Yeah, so that's how the God should be, Anybody who approaches him, he shouldn't feel if you don't follow me, you should go to the hell and burn there and I'll curse you. Whoever you are, wherever you are, you call me, I'm the God, yes, I'll take care of you. So
God
that's what our
doesn't
gods
have
do.
an inferiority complex,
Yes.
And if he has an inferiority complex, then we should question, is this really God? I truly subscribe to that. But that's very controversial area. So I wanted to come back to this, this point that you mentioned about the in your book, the economic activity and the temple correlation, and how at one time, if you look at it, there was that survey, that study which was done, right? Angus Madison's survey, study of India's place in the economic
GDP
world economics,
GDP.
World GDP. And in your book, you correlated that inflection point where India started going down with a lot of events that were happening in our country also with respect to a mandir. So do you want to maybe just talk about that for our viewers?
Correct. So there's a couple of questions. So when Angus Madison's study came, even before that, we've heard that the Bharat Soni ki Chidiya tha. Now there's two parts to it, One was that why it was called Chidiya. Chidiya is sparrow, It was called sparrow because we had that skill to develop wealth, but we never developed the skill to protect that wealth, the strength to, unfortunately. So ideally, India should have been the tiger, because the lion was found here, the tiger was found here, but then whenever you want, you just squeeze it, kill it, and take the money. So we called it sparrow. That is one. You have to call a bird, it could have been a Garuda, but you can't kill a Garuda easily. So, so that one thing disturbed me, but there's a sense to it. And one is that what did we manufacture and sold? Because if we have been taught that we're an agriculture country, we couldn't be exporting grains on those sea routes to Europe and Africa for 3 months or 6 months. They would have been, So we were a manufacturing nation, one part. And second, that how and where it was manufactured. So as I say, just look around your handicraft, what we call today. Even the plates now, the pital or the bronze kasa plate, today they gets into handicraft and a decorative piece, but they were day-to-day used products, With the rise of economy, nowadays our quality of life is inferior. We eat in aluminum or steel. Our ancestors used in silver, bronze.
If you look even at some of these plates, right? The medical benefits of eating out of those plates are very high.
Correct.
And the medical, I mean, aluminum, what it does to the system, God only knows.
And the steel. So actually our ancestors were better off. They used to have in copper and earthen material now. So and everything came out of Mandir. So everything, and these are the products which are being exported. The textile, I just told you the sari, but there are many documents saying a world clothed the world. Indian clothes, India clothed the world.
Yeah.
I just said that the textile in which mummies are wrapped in pyramids are actually
Yes.
Indian textile. So, so what were we exporting? So everything, as I said, the sari, the textile comes out of the mandir. The
Mm.
motifs of sari are mandirs, the fall, that part that you see.
Mm.
And then I just talked about the metal craft actually originated because of the mandir.
Yeah.
So the plates and all, actually they came from the lost wax technology, which was meant to. So every product came out of the mandir. So obviously, when the invaders came, they destroyed, they killed so many number of people. They enslaved millions of men and women, and most of them were sold in Turkish slave market and all. And they are a well documented fact. So obviously, every time they attacked, the mandir was attacked, the wealth was lost. The
Mm.
people who suffered were all the people suffered. They killed Brahmins intentionally.
Mm.
Kshatriyas died fighting. That's why we see these groups have low population even today.
Yeah.
And obviously, when the mandirs didn't exist, the artisans suffered because there was nothing left to manufacture, and who is the buyer for that? So obviously, our economy dwindled. And again, as you see, that it peaked sometime because Bappa Rawal came and he had chased them till Iraq, and they didn't dare come into India for next 400 years. So again, that time you see that the economy has gone up, and it went down till Marathas came, and Marathas, they did what they did with Aurangzeb and the rest of the Mughals. And then we see our economy going up, and a credit should go to Ahilyabai Holkar because she went around the country building mandirs all over India.
Mm.
And the book has a huge list. I've done a comparison of the mandirs destroyed by Aurangzeb and the ones built by Ahilyabai Holkar. And the other important part is that our mandirs, if you look at Kashi Ji Mandir, Kashi Vishwanath, so people from all parts of India contributed to build it
Mm.
because they knew why it is so important. Maharaja Ranjit Singh did it. He covered the whole of Mandir with gold. Peshwas did it. Marathas did it. The kings from Bengal did it. King from Nepal sent the money. And the most important part to talk is that when Aurangzeb has killed all the Brahmins, destroyed most of the mandirs, and he ordered rest of the citizens in Kashi that either they convert or pay jizya.
Mm.
So the worry was that the people will not convert, but they will leave the city. So what? And if they go, then the Kashi is dead. So this Hosla king from Karnataka, I have given the details in the book. He actually paid the jizya for the Hindus of Kashi, and that's how it survived. And earlier I mentioned the Brahmins were killed, so Brahmins from Andhra and Maharashtra went and settled there. So the mandirs belong to the whole of India, and we are not taught. We always think that why people didn't fight back, but they did.
Mm.
It is just
Mm.
that it is covered under the history. We are not taught about them. So
And as the Mandirs got destroyed, our economic also
correct.
started
So
sliding.
I'll give you the best example of it is that when Britishers came,
Mm.
they were no different in destroying mandirs. They were Christian invaders. So it's a very appalling thing that we call Islamic invaders, but we don't call British and Portuguese as Christian invaders
Mm.
because seculars came and they rewrote the history.
Right.
Uh, but what Portuguese did in Goa is well documented. We can have a separate show on that, and there are other experts talk on that. But they destroyed mandir. They built church, and there are still some part of
And they
mandir.
didn't do this in India, just in India, right? I mean, there's
Yeah,
documented proof on what they did in South America. It's
yeah,
only that nobody talks about it anymore.
talks about it.
Mm.
So when they wanted when they landed in Chennai, they wanted to shift the capital from Madurai
Mm.
because they said if you keep Madurai as a capital, then the Hindu world will never go away.
Mm.
It is a mandir town, temple town.
Mm.
So when they started settling Chennai, they realized that people are not coming and settling here. So they realized that if a mandir is built here, people will come and settle. So they invited the rich businessmen in south of India to come and build mandir, and that's how they were able to settle down Chennai. So
I
that
did
whole
not know
city,
this.
yeah, and so that is the biggest proof, how mandirs work to settle cities. And we have most of the cities, if you look, what they have, except mandir. As I said, Rameshwaram, Patliputra, Ujjain, Pushkar, what they survive on, it's just the mandir. So mandir was a very important part of our economy, and that's where, if I can jump your question and say that mandir rate of growth, what I have talked uh,
Mm.
is that the argument that 91 onwards the liberalization policy came and our economy did wonders. But we have counter arguments in that. What you talk is that they talk about LPG, liberalization, globalization, and privatization. There was no T of technology. You can't do a development without technology, you know. And what we got was a second-hand technology. We opened our market. We didn't get any new technology. So guys who came in India that time were Pepsi, Coke, with David, McDonald's. What great technology! They just offered alternate food and took away money from our system.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, there was no
In many
technological
cases, they bought existing companies and
yeah,
rebranded.
and correct. And the second part is that what we got, not only me, the left-based economists, which most dominate, they have written tons of reams. The liberalization of 91 only got us scams and corruption. And I have quoted some of them at length in the book. And if only policy change could have changed the world, then USSR got the perestroika and actually it broke away the USSR. When 91, many countries did this so-called liberalization, including Brazil, and I've given others. They didn't develop economically. So what differences India had? Actually, in India, the construction of Ram Mandir started. Vishwa Hindu Parishad got people to construct pillars and all those things were being carved. And that gave the new confidence to Hindus that we can get back our Mandir of Ram, the most worshipped God, uh, and something for which we have been fighting for 500 years. So without confidence, you will see some of the best cricket players when they don't perform well, they'll say, "Yeah, confidence chala gaya tha." And when they come back, they said, "I went to Ranji Trophy. I played domestic cricket. I scored so many centuries. I had a confidence, regained my confidence, and came back." And that is what happened to the Hindu society, which is 80-90% is a Hindu country. So when the majority, 80-90% people were not confident, how a policy could have changed the government or the economy? So as and when the civilization was confident, they started doing well. I'll tell you example how it impacts the society. Uh, in North, there are not many mandirs left, big mandirs. So you'll be surprised that the Birla Mandir, which is built, Lakshmi Mandir, was built after a gap of 400 years. Such a big mandir in India, North India, or North, East, West, whatever, include except the South. Because people were worried if they start thinking of building a mandir, they will be killed, their money will be taken away, or they will have to pay jizya tax. And after even Birla Mandir, it took, I think, another 100 years till Swaminarayan Mandir came on the banks of Yamuna Nadi. So you can imagine the impact. We may not able to talk about it, but this question used to hunt where there are no big temple complexes or mandir complexes like we have in South because they were destroyed and we wouldn't talk about it. Uh, you know, uh, Rajat Ray, I think I'm getting the name right. He's written his book classically. How when he'll ask his father, he wouldn't talk about it. Why we don't have big mandirs in North and rest of the India. So that was the psychological impact of rebuilding the Ram Mandir. There's a confident society, confident civilization, and that led to, and that's what we need to call it a Mandir rate of growth.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. And even today, I mean, the Ram temple, I think, should just a start. There's a lot more that's needed because I recently had the good fortune to tour the northern part, especially the Himalayan regions, and I went to a lot of mandirs. Some of them are so old, right? We can't even date it, right? It says this is where Lord Vishnu got Sita and Parvati and Shiva married, and all of those legends are there, and there's so much story around it. But the temple itself, Mandir itself, is in such a sad condition, and not only that, the all of the the commodities around the mandir, which is the flowers, the kumkum, everything is artificial. You know, so
Yeah.
they've not been able to maintain it. And I remember you in your book you had given an example of how when the mandir is large enough, like the Jagannath temple, how it's even allowed us to preserve the
Mm,
seeds, right?
mm.
If you can just share a little bit
Yeah.
about that, and then the follow up to that is that how do we inculcate this mentality in other mandirs also, which probably are not powerful enough? So there's two parts. Maybe we can
Yeah.
look at the first part. Yeah.
Yeah. So nowadays, when you go out in the market, you will see that there's a guava which is being sold, which is huge in size, uh, almost all in uniform, but zero taste. you
Yeah.
know, and the Indian variety of guava is not to be seen.
Yeah.
That is true for most of the fruits. Indian fruits are getting replaced now. They're selling dragon fruit.
Yeah.
By the name, it is so repulsive. How can I eat a dragon fruit? And it's become a fashion, but then we don't realize that they have no taste, they have no properties of a fruit which is organically or which is belongs to this nation. And that is true for other vegetables. So, cauliflower, cabbage, tomato, potato, they are not the original products of this country. They were introduced, and potato was used in a way forcefully. People were paid or threatened to grow potato by the Britishers. Uh, so in mandirs like Jagannath Puri and Mathura, these vegetables are not used in the prasad. And that is one of the reasons why our original variety of vegetables have survived in this country for so long. In fact, only those fruits and trees have survived which are one way or the other related to the mandir. Rest we are losing them every day. So we had a variety of rice in this country, actually lacks of variety. Some could grow in 2 centimeters water, some could grow even in 12 inch of water. Some could grow in 2 to 3 months, some could grow in 6 to 12 months. So that is where I said the Pujari used to predict looking at the monsoon which seeds should be shown this year.
Yeah.
And that's how mandirs were connected. And so now only few thousand varieties of rice survive in Orissa because they have to be grown to be offered to the Bhagwan Jagannath there. If that would not have been the case, even those rice varieties would have disappeared. Now look at the second aspect. If government has to save those seeds, uh, internationally, I think somewhere in Greenland they have dug up a space where its temperature is very low, where the seeds are preserved in case of what you say pralaya or the big flood comes. In India also, we have somewhere in Leh, we have been preserving our seeds. But these seeds are being preserved beautifully because every area's local, what grows locally is offered as a prasad to the Bhagwan. So that's why they are being forced to save. So once you set up Indian Council of Agriculture Research, it creates a lab somewhere in Leh and then it deploys people to save those variety of seeds versus the whole community is working to save those seeds because they have to be offered to the god. So
Yeah.
that's a beautiful.
And those seeds are preserved in the place where they're going to be sown, in very locally. So it's local seeds specific for that condition, that weather,
Correct,
being preserved. There is a harmony in that, as opposed to taking seeds from here, putting it in
huh,
lay, and then sending it somewhere else.
correct.
So the whole system uh, was decentralized at a national level, but centralized at a regional level, right?
Yeah.
Which really worked well for it. And I remember you also mentioned about the mandir not just being preserver of seeds, but the granaries were also linked to it. But even the local, the forces, right, the militia were also trained in the temples.
Yeah.
Maybe you could just talk a little bit
Yeah.
about that also.
Yeah, I'll talk on that. But before that, this protection, how something. So, the other very interesting thing that I wanted to share was that we know that our grams are called, chickpea, cowpea.
Yeah, yeah.
Why were the names? So, when British came, they could relate with rice and wheat, but not of the rest of the stuff. And the jowar bajra were called coarse meal even today in government documents. So we stopped eating them. Now government is promoting them as a millet, which used to give us a lot of protein, carbohydrate. So the chana dal is called, I think, chickpea,
Yeah.
and who would like to eat a chickpea kind of the name if you have? So chana dal survives because we have to offer besan ke laddu to the Bhagwan.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, this thing would have been lost. So now what happens if it, so the, this grams that we have, the chana dal or arar dal or whatever we grow are very rich in protein and carbohydrates. So once we are told don't eat it, and then they will say ki your food does not have enough carbohydrate and protein, so start eating non-veg starting with egg. So actually, we are changing our dietary habits and forcing vegetarians to eat non-veg. We see often our sports person being advised by seculars that you must eat, but we have legendary wrestlers, boxers, cricketers who are completely vegetarian. It doesn't impact the health of people, or in fact, the bull or the horse. We measure the energy in horsepower or elephant. They don't eat non-veg, and they have a huge amount of power. So I don't know how we started overlooking this common sense thing. Uh, Sorry, you asked the second question that you had. I forgot.
Yes, so I wanted basically to even I think I lost it. So, but let me come to another
Yeah.
question,
Yeah.
which is this whole concept which you talk about, Subha Labha, right?
Mm.
And how we should look at economics slightly differently. In
Yeah.
fact, if you could just and how
Yeah.
the Mandirs, promoted that whole idea of Subha Labha.
Yeah. So, uh, start with the concept of GDP is very new. 1930s, the world was coined. The word was coined. So why in 1930? Because the Europeans didn't have that much of money which needed to be measured. Uh, so once they had a wealth, they said, let's, after looting all the colonies, they said, let's start measuring it.
Mm.
We always had the wealth, but we never had a need to measure it because we didn't get into this ranking business who is the biggest economy second. My question is, how does it matter
Mm.
how big an economy is? And if people are happy, or is Afghanistan unhappy if its GDP is very low? They're very happy killing each other and fighting everybody. So where does GDP figure in? Uh,
I think that's a different piece, huh? Because the ones who are vocal are not the ones going. If you ask the women, I don't think they'll agree with it. But that
yeah,
is, different.
no, but just saying if so much of GDP did matter
Yes,
to the
yes,
countries, uh,
correct.
and the biggest being so the issue is that how happy your economy is, and the sad part is that GDP measures everything. If there is a war, there is a destruction, so they're very happy because for reconstruction you need more cement, more labor employed, more steels, everything. So they are very happy. So and after that building, then the furnitures will go. So they're very happy with a war. And same thing, they're very happy with the people falling sick. You eat more medicine, more hospital bills. So the economy is GDP is growing. Our concept was very different. In fact, I was reading the IMF report, which I've quoted in the book. They are worried that every European nation is not reporting the correct data of prostitution's contribution to GDP. And I'm not surprised because their economy is based on slave economy. From there they have grown to this industrial economy. What they call for them,
Yeah,
there is nothing called good bad. So for them only labh, that is profit.
yeah,
For us it is shubh labh.
yeah.
It has to be auspicious. So
Yes.
आपने खून चूस के कमाया हो or the way they're looking at the contribution from slavery because there were research papers that at what time it is beneficial to make a slave work without giving him food because slaves were such a huge number were available that it was cheaper to get one slave, not give him food, make him work and get him killed in 3 4 days. So the money you have saved on the food, you can buy 2 slaves in that. So there were research paper on that
Mm.
and the contribution, as I said, of prostitution and slavery. So compared to that, our model was very different. We had a Shubh Labh, and that's how we start going, and that's how it was tied to the Dharma, Dharma, Artha, Karma. So Trivarga comes. So our every wealth has to be generated, which is very auspicious and pious. And to give you example how it worked in the ground, you'll be surprised that like there are say 3 or 4 kirana shops, in the same lane. So they used to keep a chair in front of their house or a stool of the
Mm.
shop.
Mm.
So after they get the first customer of the day, they'll take the chair or the stool inside.
Mm.
And assuming a second customer comes, we will peep out of his shop, and if we see that the kirana shop has still chair or stool outside, we will send that customer to him.
Mm.
Because everyone should have the first sale, what we not call burni, the first sale
Yes.
of the day. And
Yes.
then they can fight rest of the day. So that was the Shubh Labh where everybody should survive. It's not that. So where I come into this is that look at the way the West functions. They will come with malls, big malls, the bigger mall. At one place you have everything. We didn't have that concept. If you go, there is a chappal ke dukan, shoes seller, there will be 5 of them. The guys who are selling stationery, 5 of them. Medicine shop, 5 of them. Clothes shop, 5 of them together. So our system was very different because our own this guy who will open the first shop will call the other 4 to open there. He doesn't think in competitive terms.
Yeah.
For them, the thinking is very different. So I'll just give an example that if you look at the file and the pen, there are hundreds of varieties of files and pens and stationery. One shop cannot keep that, you know. So some will keep some, the other will keep some other variety, third will have some other variety. And if you go, he'll happily guide you कि यहाँ नहीं वहाँ मिल जाएगा. आप उस दुकान पे चले जाइए, दूसरी नहीं तीसरी में मिलेगा. So we don't have a system कि you have to hoard money and all the money should come. I have to be the biggest merchant in the world. I should be the number one. Comes from the number one economy, number two
Yeah.
economy, what we want to. It's good to have that inspiration, but that can't be the benchmark of day-to-day life. So that is Shubh Labh. सब खुश है, everybody is surviving, and that's how we grow. So we didn't have that system कि हम एक will open one mall and only I should remain. But if you think of that, then the economy collapses. And that is one of the reasons you say in India the malls are closing. And if you go again on the Google, you'll realize that malls are being closed left, right, and center in this country. All the cities, Bombay, the first mall turned into car parking. I don't know the first mall which opened in Ahmedabad, what happened. And if you look in every city, you think, look at the first mall which was talked about, where is it today? Because every day somebody is building a new mall, new design. It's like the industrial economy, Detroit. Every day someone is building a better car somewhere else. The older city is dying, and that is happening to most of the malls. So our business practices were Shubh Labh, Dharma, Arth, Trivarga, which is so that is where our most of the business principles are part of the Dharma Shastras.
And I think this is a very good point, right? The business itself had to be dharmic.
Yeah.
The point that you mentioned, it was a big surprise to me during my sales, when I was working in corporate, that there were certain parts of the world where they called it the gaming industry. Okay. And we wanted to address the gaming industry. So people asked me, what is the gaming industry in India? Then I realized gaming industry is not just the computer games. I mean, it's not that. It's the casinos, right? And we don't have casinos, right?
Yeah.
Because it's not a good thing to take your money and just throw it at whims. So, but yeah, there's been a lot of attempt to create gaming industry.
Yeah. Goa has casinos.
Correct.
And the interesting part, Nepal has a lot of casinos, but you know that local citizens are not allowed entry into casinos because
It's
they
only for
preserve, they know,
tourists.
they know it will destroy them. So
Correct.
local citizens are not allowed.
So that aspect of bringing concept of dharma into economics, I think is important to make it sustainable, because when you bring these malpractices in, you might make quick money, but it does destroy society. And when society is destroyed, you can no longer make money. So the whole
Simple.
point about sustainability is not the morality part of it. It is,
Yeah.
I mean, dharma it's not the morality, right? It's the sustainability. I think
Correct.
that's what people don't realize. It's a short term, okay, you might make a quick buck, but long term, it's really bad.
Correct.
So, what I wanted to basically, take your view on is that we were talking about the mandirs in the north. Actually, that is the question which I forgot to ask you earlier, where the entire ecosystem around the mandir is no longer catering to it in the pure manner, right? You see a lot of Chinese products. You see the lack of too many plastics coming in. The mandir itself becoming a source of pollution, right? And the people around not understanding enough about the mandir and really going with whatever is easy for them. So I don't have flowers, so I'll put plastic flowers, right? And compromising, uh, because we talked about it in the light of the Jagannath temple actually playing such a pivotal role that it was able to protect the grains, and the mandirs in other places are losing that ability to do that, right? Which is basically an issue around the quality of people who are running the mandirs. So, what is your take on that? Um, and I'll follow that up with another question.
So I think the problem lies with we bhakts. We started looking at a cheaper and a fancier thing, and again the story lies in that we forgot that, like as we discussed earlier, what is the value of jasmine flower.
Yeah.
So if you get an artificial jasmine flower which you can wear every day, we'll say, why buy every day? Let's save money. But then in that process, what we are losing, we don't realize. And that is one of the reasons why our every festival is being attacked for creating environmental pollution. So plaster of Paris is not there. In our Agama Shastra, it mentioned that how do you build a murti? Mitti kahan se aani hai, kaise aani hai. So we are destroying it. You see the Rangoli, the stickers are being pasted, but we forgot the concept of Rangoli was something very different. Because the book I quote, they asked the lady was making, they said, we have a concept, we must feed 1,000 souls. So only a king can feed 1,000 people every day. But when you put those grains, on the ground, the ant and the different insects eat it. You are feeding the 1,000 souls. And it was also protecting your house because they wouldn't enter your house looking for food. They've got it outside their home, you
Yeah.
know.
And
And
ants
Rangoli,
actually protect your house from things like cockroaches and all,
yes, yeah,
no? So the ants are a very useful insect to have in
yeah,
your house.
correct. And so they're at the bordering. When you keep the Rangoli outside, they stay outside, they eat and protect the boundaries of your house, you know. So we had a huge concept of that. Now we are forgetting. And plus, Rangoli is a huge mathematics, integral calculus, which I've explained in the book.
Yeah.
There's a huge science. Uh,
The whole
so
mandala itself, right?
Yeah. So
Consciousness.
it's we who have forgotten when we don't realize it, ki what is there. But I have experience when I explain people, they understand the value of it and they are willing to change. So like there's a very common thing now. Most people are aware that we had a system when you go to a pious place, when there is a river body, we'll throw a coin in it. So people used to laugh at it as a superstition and all those things, but there's a deep scientific basis to it. So earlier the coins were in gold, then silver, and then copper. And we know that all these three metals have water purifying capacity. Just look at the ads of water purifier.
Yeah.
Silver ion hai, you know.
Copper.
So copper. So the whole idea was that when you have gone there, so amount of dirt, that pollution that has been created in the water body there, you have thrown your coin of silver, gold, or copper according to your own ability, and they used to be heavy. So they will settle down at the bottom of the river or the water body and keep purifying it over a period of time. So it was weaved in such nicely. So it was called superstition, and we laughed about it. And when I talk to students, youngsters, I tell them, and then they are in war, sir, we should have been told this. So I think we need to create awareness about it, you know. Uh, and the second part is that what I say, when you go to Mandir now, we buy product from everybody who is a bhakt and who is not a bhakt. So it's a bhakti is, you know, it's like a chemical process.
Yeah.
If you don't have a right ingredient, it won't work. We know that when you cook food, it's often said in our mandir and all, if you're not cooking with a devotion, if you're not happy, the food will be not good. You know, that it won't taste good, it won't be digestible. So the same thing if you're buying products of fool or nariyal from a person who is not a bhakt and offering it. Obviously, he has not showed you with that kind of a bhakti. And
Yeah.
there's difference if you stand sometime in the queue and see the two sellers, you will realize because
Yes.
he won't mind if he falls down, if his feet touches those flowers. But a true Hindu who is selling it, he will
Yeah.
be avoiding it. For him, it's a very pious thing. You know, it's
In
like
fact,
Gita Press when it publishes the book, they're never kept on the ground.
yeah.
So you need that bhakti. So it's as a bhakt we need to realize, and we'll have to make this bhakt realizes that the whole journey till you reach in front of Bhagwan is also part of bhakti.
In fact, that's a very important point, right? Because uh, the bhakti is important to ensure that the right kind of economy grows around the temple that supports the temple, because that economy is actually surviving because of the temple, and therefore it needs to support the needs of the temple. But what is happening is that, forget the bhakti part, we also have people from other communities coming in, right? And there's a lot of this, economics of temples should be secular, right? And Indian temples, Indian festivals, Hindu festivals should be served by people who don't share the Hindu values. Again, this is a controversial piece, I know, but we do have many instances of other religions having economies dedicated to them, right? Like, for example, the Jewish economy, they do have their own, certification, kosher, right? To ensure that the food is as per their. At the same time, we also have Islamic, halal, right? Now, halal has gone to many other areas. Um, what is your thoughts about something like this for mandirs also, right?
Yeah. So the first thing is that anybody who brings secularism in mandir is an idiot because
Yeah, but the
mandir is
government is doing this,
the
so
government is idiot now. Government is full of idiots. We shouldn't uh, be have any second thoughts in calling an idiot an idiot.
I agree.
Because anybody who brings secularism in a mandir is a dharmic place, Hindu's place. How can it be secular? If you have to be secular, go to the parliament, which is again not secular because government controls the mandirs. So it's a Hindu parliament actually. It runs from our money, and they can't dispute it. You know, so it is a Hindu parliament running from Hindu mandirs money, and every state government also, whichever controls because they have Hindu money. Uh, And coming to how it should be, yes, because we Hindus don't realize it. The secularism has been ingrained so much in us that we forget the basic thing, how it's affecting our livelihood or our basic survival, civilizational survival. So the one thing is that we need to make more Hindus aware of it. So, and the second part is that people often call it, when you talk about it, they will say either it's political or it is against other religion. So I need to be very clear in that it's got nothing to do with politics and it has got nothing to do with other religion. All I am saying is that I should be allowed to practice the way my dharma is, and I will make other Hindus aware of it. So I'm not saying you start hating somebody or you start abusing somebody. I am saying let's start respecting what our dharma is. And we should follow it the way it should be. And I'll tell you very honestly that whenever I have talked to youngsters, because they're more open-minded, they'll have thousands of questions, but they haven't formed opinionated, yes, I have to do this without understanding how it is damaging us. They understand and appreciate it. And I have students from other religion also, and they understand the question. When they ask question, if you answer them, they respect it. Because if you respect yourself, it's a basic principle. If you respect yourself, other will respect you. If we don't respect ourselves, why should other respect you? You know. So we need to be very clear that yes, it is about our dharma, and I'll follow what is the process involved. If some mandirs are there where other people of other religions are not allowed traditionally, they should not be allowed. If government is so interested and if there are other people of other religion are so interested to visit our mandir, they must contribute and build huge mandirs, na? Government should do it for them.
In fact, I do also think that as you said, the bucks need to put their foot down. Like, for
Yeah,
example, how can you accept plastic flowers as an
correct.
alternative just because it's in the Himalayas?
Yeah,
So we don't have flowers here. Like, Himalayas are full of beautiful,
correct.
vegetation, right? When it's not snowing. And the temples are open, mandirs are open only when it's not snowing. Nobody goes to snow, very few mandirs in the mountains are open.
Yeah.
So,
And not only that, every mandir comes with its own Agama
yeah.
Shastra and Sthal Puran.
Correct,
And if you read them, they will tell you ki what has to be offered for puja. You don't need
correct,
to invent something. You
correct.
don't need to bring something which doesn't grows in India and to offer to our Bhagwans. Our Bhagwans know what grows around our mandir and what
Yeah.
needs to be offered. It is beautifully documented in Sthal Puran and Agama Shastra.
In fact, we have told ourselves that, oh, Hindus are very flexible. Anything is okay. If you don't have this, you can use that. But that's not the case actually. Our agamas give us substitutes, but very specific substitutes. They don't basically say, oh, you use whatever you feel like. And
Correct.
plastic is definitely not on that list. So, uh, so that brings me to another point, right? Um, the mandir administrators themselves do not have the ability to control what is happening around them. You see the mandir administrators, many of the cases in the bigger mandirs, okay, the people know what they're doing. In some of the smaller ones, some of them are surviving only because of bhakti, right? There is no knowledge, there's no skills, and there doesn't seem to be a custodian actually to keep all of this together, because definitely not the government. What is your take on this actually? How can this be changed?
See, I think we need to make more people aware of it. And that process is on. People are getting more aware. You'll see many people have started coming to clean the mandir or renovate the mandir. People are coming up. Uh, and one thing I think is that the government should just go out of the mandir. So one of the questions government say, and a lot of people ask, the government, if you go away, who will take care of mandir? There will be corruption. So the first is that the people who don't go to mandir or would not have given a single penny are the first one to ask this question. Because a bhakt, after giving the money in the mandir, never turns back and looks, "Ki kya hua? What happened to this money?" Because it's been given to Pandit Ji. We know it's for the Pandit Ji who's there or the Pujari there. That is a true bhakt. And now my second point is that this government is just 75-year-old. Our mandirs are 1,000 odd years old. So what happened? Who was managing those mandirs in just 925 years? And especially when they're Christian invaders and Islamic invaders, and our mandirs saw through that. So because the local community always stands up. And in the book I've given a couple of years back, there was an issue in a mandir in Jharkhand. Villagers stood up, threw down the trustees, and took over the management. There is a classic case of Tarakeshwar Mandir. where there was a Mathadij was a corrupt, and Subhash Chandra Bose, Chittaranjan Das led the movement. But actually, they started a lot of wrong practices in Mandirs also. They took to the court. The moment you took a case to the court becomes, that monkey and two cats and the roti story. So they'll start eating away and took away everything of the Mandir. So they removed the Mathadis, they installed another Mathadis. But the other political thing they did was that in all our Mandir, mostly the pujaris are not from the same state. Like Kedarnath has from Kerala, some other Mandir has from some other place. Uh, so they got a Bengali Mathadis, and again the situation deteriorated. And under Mamata Banerjee, the head of the board was a Muhammad Hakim, a Muslim.
Yeah.
So that's how, and that Mandir was actually built, offered lot of land to the refugees who came to India from Bangladesh. Now that Mandir gives away land to Muslims.
Yeah.
So how we have, so this, the language, the state chauvinism destroys the Mandir. I think we need to understand it. Tarakeshwar Mandir is a beautiful example of it. So again, I say our Agama Shastra has a beautiful way. Sal Puran defines how puja should be done, how Mandir should be maintained. It's just that the government moves out, there will be enough people who will try to go and manage it. And as I said again and again today, lot of people are interested. They just don't go because, as you say, you have to be keep distance from lawyer, police. Similarly, when the government is there, once they are out, because there are still lot of mandirs in, if you go to smaller villages,
Yeah.
we talk about mandirs in the bigger city, but there are a lot of mandirs in dense forest. I've given some examples in the book where nobody will dare go, but you'll find one Brahmin or Sadhu or Sant is there who is taking care, gets up in Bhor, what we call 3 a.m., in the midst of all those animals. He offers puja and he's managing those mandirs. So where does a bhakt comes in the picture and where does the government comes in the picture? So it's just that once the government goes out, there will be enough people in this country who will manage the mandir.
Yeah.
It's just that the people know they can please out money from there. So this kind of people are there in many trusts, I know. But once the government is out, the local people will stand up for it. I'm very sure of it.
In fact, I would like to do a more detailed discussion with you on this very topic, right? Reviving mandirs. Because, see, there are two parts to it. One is going and claiming the mandirs which were broken down, which is a legal process. And there are a lot of people in that. And obviously, we have reclaimed one mandir. There are more, and ultimately, we will reclaim them. But the ones that are already there, right? Ensuring that they run properly. And there are a number of structural, societal, political, educational, you name it, multiple levels, there are issues. I think, it would be of interest to speak to someone like you, and maybe even somebody else. So you might want to, it could be a good panel where, sit together and figure out, like, how do we give, how do we give a path forward? So if you have a local mandir, how do you support it? How does the community come together? Because the other thing is the communities have changed, right? So I'm no longer living where my ancestors lived. And why my ancestors might have a lot of say in that area where I live. I'm just like, one more person in a large apartment. In the cities, that's an issue, right? You have a lot of city encroachment because people have moved out. So because our social structure has changed, lots of things have changed. We can do this maybe well in the villages, but in the cities, it's a little more difficult. And many of these temples are now, temple cities are now big metro cities, right? Which are, you have corporation and you have God knows what all coming. So I would really like to have that conversation with you, but I think today is not the day. It's already been an hour and a half, and I've taken a lot of your time. But thank you very much. Before we end, is there something you would like to add?
Yeah. So I'll just like to add two things on the question that you said. We can have a lengthy discussion. There are two parts to it. One is that we need to have in every Gurukul, we need to start a temple management course. So now a lot
Yes.
of MBA institute have gone into it, and I've written in the book. Anybody who comes from a management MBA institute doing temple management, he or she should not be allowed near the mandir because you would have been taught how to extract more money, how to
Correct.
increase the VIP darshan fee, all those
Correct.
kind of.
Correct.
They'll just extract money, and I'm very clear that it should be taught in the Gurukuls and not in any MBA or educational institute, the so-called modern educational
Yeah.
institute. In the second volume, I've given a lot of solutions, but the smallest thing that we need to do as a bhakt, and coming before that to the mandirs. So many societies in Bombay have mandirs, where people of that society manage it, though they come from different places. And in many societies, we will find that with so much of class and caste we talk, it's the milkman who is managing it. He's the head.
Yeah.
Because after distributing milk in the morning, he has to distribute in the evening. Rest of the time, he takes care. And all the who's who of the building, the richest of the societies, they come and they accept what the milkman tells them. कि पूजा ऐसे ही होगी, इस दिन होगी, ये होगी. He's the boss. So you have to see how Mandir destroys the class and the caste difference. Come to Bombay, I'll show you. I can show anybody. I'm sure it's in other cities as well. Uh, the last thing that I request everybody in the last chapter of the second volume is that uh, the least that we can do, it doesn't matter whether a male or female, young or old, rich or poor, we must dedicate it. If you want to do something for Mandir, dedicate 10 years of life. And the smallest thing we should do, promise to yourself that for 10 years, every day you will visit Mandir once in a day. We just start do that small thing, things will change. We don't need to have a huge big plan कि हम ये करेंगे वो करेंगे कुछ नहीं चाहिए. All we need to make sure that हम 80 years के हैं तो 80 to 90 years I'll give every day one day I'll visit, or if I'm a 10-year-old I want to do something for the mandir, 10 to 20 I'll visit the mandir every day once in my life. If you can do this much, our mandirs will change forever, and they'll be back to their old glorious days. We don't need anything big.
Thank you. That's a very nice note to end this discussion on, but we should probably have more. So thank you very much, Sandeep ji, for being a part of this discussion.
Pleasure
and
talking
thanks
to you.
to the viewers also for listening on.
Thank you.